migration. Minister, were you to be returned to government and find yourself in the same ministerial position that you're in today, how would you improve or reform the asylum process?
Well, firstly, what we need to do is more of what has been done in the last 2.5 years. So we've gone from a situation, I think most people know this at this stage, where we've had 3,000 or 4,000 people a year coming in seeking international protection. To this year, we might have close to 20,000 people. And so in that short space of time, we've had to ramp up the system. So we've gone from processing 3,000 or 4,000 applications to this year, there'll be 14,000. And next year, there's already plans in place that would allow us to process up to 25,000 applications. So the way to have a system that's efficient and effective, that gives people their answers quickly if they're entitled to stay here. And again, if they're not, that they get that quickly and that they leave quickly. It's by making sure that the system works, that they get those answers quickly. So I've ramped up. So, well, we went through a situation many years ago where people were waiting years, and I'm talking 4, 5, 6 years. At the moment, about 50% of applications get their first answer in less than 3 months. That's because I have applied an accelerated process to people coming from safe countries, people who already have asylum elsewhere, or people coming from the highest number of applications. So Jordan and Nigeria are those two countries at the moment. So by applying that system, not only are we getting answers much more quickly, but for many of those countries, and in some instances, we've seen the number of people coming from those countries drop by about 80%. So it's about getting answers more quickly, but also it's acting as a deterrent, because what we've seen with many of those people is that, unfortunately, they're using the international protection system as an economic way into this country. Now, we have legal migration, and it's really important to stress that migration is good for this country. But often the two get intertwined. And as recently as yesterday, I was on the doors talking to someone and they said, we have hundreds of thousands of people coming in here through the international protection system. We're not doing anything about it. But when you break it down, yes, we have thousands of people coming here every year through legal routes. They're working in this country. They're contributing. You then have other people coming seeking international protection. And many of them now contributing, working, making their way and getting that access to our communities and settling down and being part of the community. So the best way to have an immigration system that's firm but fair, that gives people the support if they need it, and make sure that if they don't, that they have to leave, is by making sure the system processes applications quickly. And if somebody doesn't have a right to be here, and we have to be very clear on that, that they're either assisted to leave, and that's actually the most efficient and effective way that you can remove a person. You buy them a plane ticket, you put them on the plane and off home they go. If it gets to the point where they have to be deported, then you physically remove them. And obviously we need to do more work in that regard.
What percentage of deportation orders are followed through with an actual deportation? Do we know? Do we have that data?
Well, it is a relatively small number. I mean, deportation orders 5%. signed in the last year alone have gone up by about 160%. Enforced deportations are a small percentage of that, because actually voluntary returns account for a huge amount. So there's about 840 people this year have left the state, many of them voluntarily. Now, that's not a shake of the hand and a wave goodbye. They're bought plane tickets and they're sent home. It's quicker, it's easier, it's
840
more
represent what percentage of those who are ordered to leave the state?
It's about half. It's about half, but you also have people
So half melt away?
Well, no, you have people who leave who don't engage with the system. So people who leave, and we do signs of life checks. So you check, are people on social welfare? Are they getting any form of benefits? Are they looking for housing? And you can generally get a sense if somebody is here or not, because it's very difficult, no matter what you say, to live in this country without any form of support or without any type of
So what's the working
checks.
figure that your officials rely on in terms of trying to understand how many people do melt away into the system?
Well, you look at the number of deportation orders that are signed, and to be honest, it doesn't always get to that point. People, if they get a negative decision, often decide to leave themselves. You imagine this and put yourselves in this situation.
Well, what's the figure? 10, 15, 20%? Well, what's
it can vary, and this is the thing that people have to understand. Trends change, and when I first came into the department, we had a huge amount of people coming through our ports and our airports, people who were coming without documentation, false documentation, seeking asylum. In response to that, what we've done is more doorstop operations. So people getting off the plane being checked by border control. We have more liaison officers in other countries. We've ramped up our border control.
Yeah, we'll talk about those border controls and
but what
the impact.
I'm trying to say is that because of that, it's actually reduced the number of people coming through our ports and airports. So flows happen and change, and you have to respond.
So basically, this is one of the biggest frustrations in the country at the moment. The government have been absolutely asleep at the wheel in relation to this. So there are very valid questions that you asked. So 98 people out of 1,750 last year who received deportation orders were actually had that deportation order enforced. 650 of those people had what's called a voluntary deportation. When I've asked the Minister for Justice before, can she check have those individuals left the country, she said she cannot confirm if those individuals have left the country. And I have a PQ here that shows that answer. So that's an incredible situation that we have only 5% of the people who receive deportation orders actually being deported. And you know, I just think
that's the 98 figure.
That's the 98.
650 though left.
No, we don't know that because you can't. The minister stated it. Like, I'll read the parliamentary question that I have here. Hold on one second. The minister confirms to me in this parliamentary question that there isn't checks leaving the country. And the reason why there isn't checks leaving the country is because we have a border with the north of Ireland.
We have an open border, Paddy. You want
exactly.
to put a border down the Irish Sea. Is this really your solution
the solution
to
this is, in my view, is that we actually treat Ireland as a unit, north and south, in the same way now that we do for goods because of the Brexit issue, and that we negotiate with the Labour government in London to see can we actually come to an accommodation in these terms. It would suit the London government because flows of people often go both ways. At different times, depending on how the economy is. So that's just one figure in relation to the other point here is, really? and this is really key here as well. For 2 years, I asked the minister questions in relation to how people are coming in because 70-80% were actually registering at the International Protection Office in Dublin, and I thought that was strange because you'd imagine people would register at the airports or the ports, and it became clear to me that people were coming from Britain through the north into the south. And for 2 years Helen McEntee refused to answer that question, and she said the reason being is because we don't ask that question or the information cannot be collated. And again, we're spending hundreds of millions of euros on this process, and the government is unable to measure what's happening, and if you can't measure, you can't manage.
Let's go to Westminster and ask the Labour government to put another border in the Irish Sea.
Well, first
it's
of
very
all,
easy to say that. But I mean, we all have PTSD from Brexit, and you want to go back.
Well, all I'm saying is that in relation to goods and an Irish sea border for goods, people said it couldn't happen. It did happen, and the world didn't end as a result of it. And in actual fact, it is absolutely impossible for us to really control who is coming onto the island of Ireland or not if we don't have a system whereby if a person travels from London to Belfast or London to Derry, and the other result, the other option here is actually people being stopped on the border with Newry on buses and then returned to Newry to get on the bus to be stopped at Newry at the buses.
Dahi Doolan, would you put another border in the Irish Sea?
Look, let's be
you put a big border in the Irish Sea to catch your way.
Let's be very clear that this government have normalised failure. And it did failure on housing, healthcare, childcare, and as well as the asylum seeking process. We need an asylum seeking process that's fair, it's just, it's speedy and swift. And we would triple the number of staff in a standalone agency dealing with migration. And what we need to ensure is also the number of people who have got asylum, who are locked into the direct provision because of the housing crisis. You have a very, very large number of people locked in there. That needs to be dealt with. And what we need to ensure is that this doesn't become some sort of political football. We're dealing with human beings who need to be properly and adequately treated, and their cases heard justly and managed swiftly, and they have a right to appeal, and if they fail, they're deported in a humane fashion. What we won't entertain is this being turned into some sort of political football. We need to also agree that migration is a good thing for Ireland. The biggest cause of migration is the EU. I'm not leaving the EU anytime soon. It has contributed to our economy, or the healthcare, the hotel industry is all there's staff there from all over the world working there, and they're welcome to do so. But this government and consecutive governments have absolutely broken the system that's in place, and we need change. The people want change. There's anger out there. There's frustration out there. I hear it every day on the doorsteps. I hear it in our communities long before the election. And they need change. And we intend to change the system, radically change the system.
And radically change the system is what? Recruit some extra people.
Well, with all due respect, I didn't interrupt you, Minister. Please. What we have is, we do need to increase the staffing, absolutely, because people need their cases heard. They need to dealt with swiftly, humanely, legally, with right to appeal. We also need to ensure that HICWA are employed to inspect the IPAS centre. There's people making a lot of money out of IPAS. There's a lot of people, private developers. Yet again, this government have privatised the whole asylum-seeking process, and the developers and the private industry are making money.
Where all this structural change you keep talking about is
no, with all due respect, I did.
People.
My opening piece was, we will establish a new agency that has a whole of government approach in dealing with asylum seekers. That was my opening point. We'll triple the staffing to ensure that the applications are dealt with swiftly and progressively and dealt with accordingly. That's our promise to the Irish people on November 29th.
Jim O'Callaghan, had you been Minister for Justice for the last 4 years, how would you have dealt with this?
Well, I think I would have displayed, and I'm not saying anyone here isn't, political honesty about this issue. Like, it is a complex issue. When the history of the 21st century is written, one of the defining issues will be the issue of migration and asylum applications. And like, if we want to look at this at a higher level, obviously what needs to happen is these countries around the world which are dysfunctionally governed, and it makes you realise what a good country we have here in Ireland, that are dysfunctionally governed, they need to get their acts together and put in place democratic systems and build their economy so that their citizens aren't leaving the country. This is a debate that needs to be driven by data. Back in 2019, only 4,200 people applied for international protection. This year, up to the end of October, it's 16,600. So we have to be driven by that, and we need to recognise that it's putting a lot of pressure on the accommodation system. I think the state has done extremely well. I think the Irish people have been extremely charitable, not just in response to international protection, but also in response to Ukraine. Like, at present, we're providing accommodation for 32,645 international protection applicants. It's putting a huge amount of pressure on the system, and I think we need to be honest about that. What we need to do, I commend the Minister, I know she's going to give out to me for saying this, but we did suggest back in 2023 that more countries should be designated as safe. And since then,
designating it as safe doesn't actually.
Can I finish my point,
sure
Minister? Just finish my point. We suggested designate more countries as safe, and the effect of that is that we've seen applications from those countries go down. So we need to use this procedure much more. Also, if somebody has come from a European country where they have been refused their application for asylum, they can't just go through the process again. We've won European-wide harmonisation. And similarly, if they've come from another European country and they come to Ireland and then apply, they should really be sent back to that country to make their application. So there are rules in place. The Migration Pact hasn't been read by many people. In my opinion, it is reflecting the fact that Europe needs to work more harmoniously together in this issue. We saw what happened in Brexit when the British thought that they could solve asylum applications and immigration by leaving the EU. The issue has become a bigger problem for them. So I think we need honesty and respect of it. I think we need to recognise we need to have rules in place. And one thing can I just finish on? This system will not operate if at the end of the process, people who have been refused end up in the same process or the same system as people who have been successfully applied for international protection. There has to be a difference.
And Fianna Fáil have supported Fine Gael for over 10 years. This is the joke. There's a contrived difference here, but Fianna Fáil have continued to vote confidence in every Justice Minister. So they have coalesced together. With all due respect, Minister, don't cut across me, please. I didn't cut across you.
Well, sorry, you cut across Jim O'Callaghan.
He said his last point. It's an important point.
Yeah, I know, but don't be so precious now about someone interrupting you.
Can I finish my point? That Fianna Fáil have continued to support the Fine Gael government for over 10 years now. So it's a bit rich coming in here with 8 days before the election making promises.
Jim makes an important point. What the situation is that we're spending hundreds of millions of euros to try and differentiate between those who need help and those who don't need help. And actually for at least 60% that we're sure of, the actual outcome is exactly the same. And, that's a crazy situation. So, like, even the issue of people coming into the country without travel documents, there are still thousands of people coming in without travel documents currently.
No, there aren't. There's about a 40% drop of people coming through ports and airports.
Yes, but 5,000 people came through Dublin Airport in 2023 in relation to not having a travel document, just in Dublin itself. So, we need to get to a situation whereby, absolutely, we do have a moral responsibility to help those who need help. There's the issue of planning as well, which I think is very frustrating too. And because this is not just about numbers at the top level, it's also about what's happening in the communities. Like, Roger O'Gorman has a situation where he defended a TD in his own government for putting in an opposition to a house because it was overlooking his window. Now, at the same time, the government is deleting the planning process for hundreds of thousands of people across the country. Yeah, and that is hypocritical in relation to that.
Look, we have Pather Tobin who wants to put a border down the Irish Sea. That's your solution to this problem now. Sorry, I'm not sure what rock you've been under for the last few years, but the idea that we just go to the Labour government and say, do you know what?
Would you ask?
It worked out.
Just try it, would you?
It worked out really well for us the last few years. The blood, sweat and tears that were put into keeping the border open for everybody's benefit. The solution here is to
Would
put
you
a
commit
border
to
down the
asking
Irish Sea.
the Labour government?
It's absolute nonsense, that solution. I'm sorry, but I wouldn't even entertain it, because
course.
that's not the solution here. We have a global issue on our hands, and it's not let's go it alone or let's just draw a border down the Irish Sea. Dahi is talking about Europe and how great it is and how we're not going to walk away from them. Fianna Fáil voted against the European Pact, which is the only thing that we have.
Sinn Féin.
Or Sinn Féin, apologies.
Freudian slip there.
Fianna Fáil did not vote against the pact. Sinn Féin voted against the pact and have said very clearly, well, let's go it alone. How are we going to go it alone?
No.
Check,
You
we
have
didn't.
voted
We said it
against
should have
the
been
pact.
7 different votes on the different sections.
It doesn't matter. You voted
but
against the pact. There was
we didn't say
nothing
we'd
in the
oppose
pact.
it in its
And can I
entirety.
just say
Be
on the
clear.
safe countries, with all due respect, Jim, you keep talking about the safe countries. Designating a country safe doesn't actually change it. What's actually made the difference is the fact that I put them into an accelerated process 2 years ago. I've then added to that list, which means more people have gone into it. And in fact, the larger number of
at the end
people
of it, if they
that
fail
have
it,
been
they're not removed.
accelerating. Well, sorry, when you have an
So, what's the point of having an accelerated pact?
Can I come in?
Jim O'Callaghan.
When
Jim
you-
Chair,
O'Callaghan.
thank you very much.
When you have 80% less people coming from a country,
Okay.
that's what you call a result.
Jim O'Callaghan.
Okay, I disagree with what the Minister said, but I want to get to the more important point. We need to be honest. We have a difficulty in this country. We have an open border. Nobody wants to have any barriers on the border between the north and the south. So how do we deal with that? There's a mechanism in the legislation, which is a returns order. And also the UK has now been designated as a safe third country. It's the only one designated under our legislation. There's a difference between safe countries and safe third countries. We now can effect return orders to the UK, and that's obviously what we need to progress down doing. That's the method of dealing with people who've come in from the UK and should have applied there.
Dahi,
the
can I
best-
just before we
Just in
go to
relation
an
to
ad
that, just
break?
one point.
Yeah.
One, obviously, the solution is remove the border, have united Ireland, and let us control the sea border, which is the natural border.
Yeah, that's
in and
not going to
out.
happen this week.
No, but I mean, that's our
Five-year plan
promise. On the
now.
29th, Irish unity will be centre stage for us.